Welcome into the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron alongside Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams, and it's that top 40 time. Let's look at 6 through 10. Before we get going, a reminder of some of the criteria here. We try to balance talent, need, opportunity, Gene, potential, all those things. It's not just about being a great player or a starter, but also what we're doing offensively, what we're doing defensively, and whether or not the opportunity to play is there. So some thoughts on, first of all, we are the original. How long has this been going on now? A long, long time.
Well, I know we went back, on our podcast earlier, Aslan and Corey were talking about how we had Jameis Winston ranked in 2013 going beforehand, right, and how stuff finished out. So at least 2013, if not before that.
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's a fun exercise because one of the things that happens, Ira, is that when you go through here, good and bad, you're reminded of guys that did not have the kinds of seasons that maybe we ranked them to have last year or that you hoped them to have. And then there are others that you say, that's a really talented player, and maybe I omitted him on a list, or he's down in the 30s, and you realize maybe he should be higher. As we look back at that the first 30, you realize that there are a lot of skill players on this team. They do have talent at the skill players, those positions traditionally. If you're talking about defensive back, running back, wide receiver, I mean, they've got skill players.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think, when you look at guys that, maybe you ranked higher or lower than everybody else did, I'd single out a guy like Hakeem Dent. I think I had him all the way up at 16 because I think, if you looked at Hakeem Dent, I think so many times when guys come in as true freshmen, we wonder, how much of an opportunity is he going to have right away? But I think DB is one of those positions where a guy could come in from day one and play. I mean, you see it at programs all the time. So I think he's a guy that's going to – I think if we did this at the end of the season, I think Hakeem Dent's going to be much higher. He ended up in the mid-20s in our composite rankings. But, I mean, you can't tell me he's not one of the top 20 football players on that team. And I think there are some guys like that that probably, depending on what kind of opportunity they have, might do much better than we have him projected.
I would have looked at an Amari Gaynor in that situation because he got hurt right off the bat, and he's way down in the low 30s there, I think. And you think about what he potentially could be for them at a position of need like linebacker. So if you're looking for a guy that maybe isn't way high on this list, I'd look to him, or maybe I overranked or underranked, I should say, like a Keith Gavin, who now gets an opportunity to learn from a true and talented wide receiver coach, really something he hasn't had all that much since arriving in Tallahassee.
Yeah, Gaynor's a good guy. I think wasn't he the leading tackler in the spring game? I mean, he showed when he was healthy. I mean, last year, people forget, this is a Rivals 100-member, really good player coming in and showed what he can do in the spring. But for me, I'm going to throw out the position that gets lambasted the most, and rightfully so, and that's offensive line. I had Brady Scott all the way up at 14, which is way higher than anybody else. I think he ended up in the 20s. And the reason for that is, number one, he's your most versatile offensive lineman. He can play guard, he can play tackle. And with Landon Dickerson transferring, who are your tackles right now? Juwan Williams, Abdul Bello, Chaz Neal, Ryan Roberts transferring in. Who knows if he's going to be any good? I think he's going to end up having to go back to tackle again. And if you go back and look at how he played last year, he was almost serviceable by the end of the season as a redshirt freshman. Now, that is something to strive for in the offensive line. I went back and looked at the Pro Football Focus grades. The best game FSU played, arguably, last year was against Boston College because they actually won against a ranked team. Now, maybe they shouldn't have won the game if they did enough to put themselves in position. The top-rated run blocker and pass blocker in that game was Brady Scott. So he got a lot better as the season went on. With a whole nother season in here, I think he can be a very solid offensive lineman, a group that desperately needs a guy who can give them some consistency.
Do you have a guy you underranked for sure?
Logan Tyler. It's funny. I didn't realize that, in the malaise of 2018 Florida State football, I didn't realize what a good year he had. And Corey actually kind of explained this really well in the story that you can find at warchant.com, where we broke down the player by player. Logan Tyler actually had a really good year. I think he led the ACC in punting average. He obviously punted a lot. He had plenty of opportunities, but he quietly had a pretty good year. It just was lost in all of the other dysfunction on that football team.
That's a good pick because I don't think if you polled a bunch of Florida State fans about the mess that was last season, that they would be able to say right off the bat, "Hey, who had a good year, guys." Logan, I don't think they would have done that. All right, let's get into it now. Let's look at the list. We'll start with 6 and go down through 10. You want to do it that way? Let's go with Levonta Taylor. Everybody knows Levonta Taylor had high expectations going into last year. It did not work out. Your thoughts on Levonta Taylor coming in at number 6?
Well, I'm going to rely a little bit on a friend of Warchant, and that's Brian McFadden, the former player of Florida State NFL, won a couple Super Bowls. He did an analysis piece with us talking about the defensive backfield, and he really said some interesting things to say about Levonta, how much he played out of position and where they set him up to fail. going against usually the biggest receiver on the other team, putting him out in an island, which is not a good matchup for him. You know he's a great athlete, you know he's fast, but that's just, you can't match up with some of these guys. The move back to more of the kind of covering the slots and the kind of that corner star position this year will be a much better fit for him. This is his second year in the system. We know he's a talented player. I think he'll get his act together, and I think he's going to be the most consistent defensive back you have this year. So I love him, and I think he'll definitely be in that top 10 without a doubt at the end of the year.
It's kind of a theme, I think, if we look at this list of guys that maybe were playing out of position or asked to do things they couldn't do. Number 7, Hamsah Nasirildeen on this list fits that mold absolutely perfect. This is a guy that was asked to do things he simply physically could not do a year ago, and it frustrated all of us Noel fans to no end. But this year, he's a more natural fit, we think, at linebacker.
Yeah, and I mean, he I think he ended up leading the team in tackles last year, and a lot of times didn't necessarily, I don't think, wasn't exactly knowing exactly what he was supposed to be doing or filling his job perfectly, but he's so athletic and talented and physical, they end up racking up a ton of tackles. And I think, especially late in the year, he had some huge games, and I think getting him closer to the line of scrimmage is good. I don't know if he's a guy that needs to be playing center field. I mean, the play I think everybody remembers is when he jumped out of bounds to bat a ball back inbounds. Basically, that could have set up a touchdown.
Did you have to bring that up, Gene?
Well, but my point is that I think sometimes spatial awareness wasn't always his strength. But man, you get him in front of a ball carrier, he can inflict some pain.
Yeah, he can hit you, and we want him to be the tackling machine that we think he can be. Now, DJ Matthews is an interesting one. He comes in at number 8 for all of us because this is an awful lot about potential. It certainly wasn't based on the season he had a year ago. Why do we think we have him there, and why did he underachieve a year ago? Really, you could say that about the entirety of the offense. But
well, Jeff, there's one thing being, and I don't know how many spring practices I've been around, 20, 30, whatever. It seems like it's been forever. But I've learned that you really can't take any team generalizations from it. Are they going to be good or are they going to be bad? I don't think you can really tell a whole lot from this. What you can tell is there's usually 1 or 2 or 3 players that jump off the page that you show that they reach that next level of improvement over the spring. You go, you know what, they're going to be pretty good. DJ Matthews is one of those guys. Here's a guy that, I mean, Willie Taggart said him himself, and then he was the most improved player in the spring. I know Ira did a story on him after the spring game talking about, you know, how he really admitted that he didn't have the work ethic. He got between James Blackerby and his roommate, and I think one of the support staff guys was really on him, and he really grew up a lot. I think he had 120-something yards in the spring game, so really played well in that. I think he's finally about ready to reach his potential, and I think he'll fit so well in Kendall Brow's offense as well.
That's the thing. I think that last part there, yes, maturity matters, obviously. You can hear that a lot. We'll wait and see if that's true. He has ability, and in this offense, I do think he has an opportunity to really light it up. Let's go to number 9, and Dontavious Jackson. I think we all know if you're going to look at that position group, you're gonna select him because of the reps and because of how consistent he's been. Not a lot to talk about there. I think by and large we know he's a guy. I want to go to number 10. I want to go to Khalan Laborn because there's a guy, speaking of offense, speaking of what he could do in this offense, and we got just ever so slight a glimpse a year ago, and unfortunately he got hurt, but there was a guy that electrified Noles fans everywhere. We realized he's potentially special.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, if you go back to that spring game, the play he had in the spring game where he had the famous quote afterwards about
one of my all-time favorite.
Yeah, but which we won't repeat here. No. But anyway, yeah, no, he's a super talented guy. He was very frustrated as a freshman, and he's a guy that's been on campus now for over 2 years, but you haven't seen a ton of because he redshirted as a freshman inexplicably with Tamori Terry as a freshman, and then last year he gets banged up early in the year. But we saw the glimpses of what he can be, and again, in this kind of offense, you got to think what Kendall Brow's offenses have done at places like Baylor, FAU, Houston. Imagine with a skill player he hasn't had a Khalan Laborn or many guys like that. I just think that the potential for guys like that, getting them in space and getting them a lot of at-bats, bodes really well.
Yeah, one thing that stood out in the spring game too in general was we did see much more consistency and structure within the offense, guys knowing assignments, knowing what they're supposed to do, lining up properly, complementary routes, things that just didn't exist a year ago. So
well, that is one of the positives. So you can't take a whole lot from the spring, but I think the fact they were actually getting lined up consistently, there wasn't that confusion. I think that is a positive. Going back to Laborn, the one thing that, in addition to the abysmal blocking on the offense, the other thing that stood out to me beyond Terry, did anyone on offense ever make a big play? I mean, that's the thing to me. Where was this is Florida State. I mean, you're just used to big plays happening all over the field. That's why Laborn, I think, because he is that guy at that position. I can guarantee if he stays healthy, he's going to have a lot of highlight films. He got, one touch in the Virginia Tech game, and that was one of the best plays of the season.
Yeah,
that we're making guys miss all over the field. So, I mean, in this, you get him out The fast offense, spread him out, get him out in open space. Watch this kid. He's going to be special.
If you're selling hope and you're selling positivity, these are the kinds of players and names you would bring up, because think about that position group as a whole. They love Anthony Grant. And he's way down on our list, and there's a guy that if he meets the potential that they described last year, incessantly I might add, then maybe you've got 4 and 5 guys in that position group coupled with receiver, that you can really do some things if you can block it up even a little bit. When we come back in the countdown, we'll have to take a look at the top 5, obviously. We'll do that the next time on the Warchant.com report.